You think we ruled the earth? Think again. Before pyramids, before steel, before even the first word was spoken in the darkness of a cave, this planet was not ours. It belonged to something far older, far more brutal. It was a world ruled not by kings or gods, but by creatures that did not need civilization to dominate. They had claws, fangs, muscle, and time. For millions of years, Earth was a proving ground, a savage arena where survival wasn't earned by intelligence, but by instinct. We often imagine evolution as a ladder, climbing ever higher toward progress. But that's a lie. Evolution is not linear. It is war, brutal, constant, and indifferent. Every species that ever existed fought to stay alive, and most lost. 99% of all life that has ever lived on Earth is now extinct. The fossils in our museums, they're not stories of triumph, they're tombstones. And long before Homo sapiens stepped out of Africa, before we lit the first fire or sharpened the first stone, there were monsters, real ones, with strength and savagery that would put today's apex predators to shame. Picture a world where the forests echo not with birdsong, but the roar of a predator 10 times your size. Imagine rivers where serpents thicker than tree trunks coil in silence. Plains where thunder isn't weather but the footfalls of giants. In this world, we were not the threat. We were the vulnerable, the small, the hunted. Even our closest relatives, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, were not safe. Their fossils often lie beside gnawed bones and claw marks. They lived under constant siege, not just from the environment, but from the creatures that called Earth home long before them. Nature did not care who was smarter. It cared who could survive the longest night, who could outrun a predator, who could hear death coming before it struck. And when early humans did finally emerge, we did not arrive as conquerors. We arrived as prey with potential, a new contestant in an ancient tournament. We were weak, slow, poor eyesight, no claws, no armor, just 2 feet, 2 hands, and a brain barely big enough to dream of fire. But we adapted. We learned to hide, to run, to think ahead. We watched the monster sand, learned from them. We saw the strength of the lion and made spears. We felt the cold and built shelters. We burned their world to survive in it. In that ancient battlefield, every sunrise was earned. Every night survived was a victory. And slowly, painfully, we began to change the rules. But make no mistake, the monsters came first, and the earth was theirs. This chapter in our story isn't just about what came before use, it's about what we had to survive to become what we are now. It wasn't just the invention of tools or language that made us human, it was the fear. Because before we learned to rule the earth, we had to learn to survive it. Imagine a sky not filled with clouds, but with wings massive, silent, deadly, shadows moving faster than sound, descending without warning, bringing instant death with the force of a falling boulder. On this ancient earth, the skies weren't safe. They were hunting grounds, and the predators that ruled them did so with precision, power, and fearlessness. Nowhere was this more true than in prehistoric New Zealand, where the Haast's eagle soared at the top of the food chain. With a wingspan exceeding 10 feet and weighing up to 33 pounds, it was the largest eagle ever known to exist, but its size was only half the terror. It had talons as sharp and long as tiger claws, capable of piercing deep into flesh and snapping bones with ease. Its prey? The moa flightless bird that could stand taller than a grown man. But that wasn't the eagle's only target. Evidence suggests that early humans may have fallen victim as well. To the Haast's eagle, a soft-bodied, slow-moving biped was just another opportunity. When it dove from the sky, it struck with a force of over 1,000 pounds per square inch. A single blow could crush a skull. It didn't stalk. It didn't chase. It killed from above in silence. To live in a world under that shadow was to know constant fear. Unlike land predators, which you could hear approaching or see rustling in the brush, the eagle offered no warning. death came from the blue. You didn't get a second chance, you barely got a first. But the Haast's eagle wasn't alone in its dominance. Across the Ice Age world, other avian giants claimed their own territories. In Argentina, the terror birds flightless yet ferocious used their speed and beaks like axes. In Europe, enormous vultures and condors circled above the carnage of the megafauna. And in North America, the skies were ruled by birds with wingspans rivaling small planes, like Argentavis magnificens. What made these sky killers so effective was not just their size, but their evolution. They developed acute vision, capable of spotting prey from miles away. Their brain structures adapted for high-speed coordination during a dive. They mastered the third dimension of hunting, attacking from above, where no defense was possible. Humans had no natural defense against them, no fur to cushion an impact, no armor to deflect a strike, just bare skin and panic. The only way we survived was by watching the sky, living under trees, building shelters, traveling in groups. Fear, once again, was our teacher. And yet, despite the danger, we remembered them. In rock art, in legend, in whispered stories around firelight, sky gods, feathered demons, the bird of death. Today, the Haast's eagle is gone, likely driven to extinction by human hunting of the moa, its primary food source, and perhaps by direct conflict with our species. It's a pattern we'll see again and again, the arrival of Homo sapiens rewriting ecosystems, toppling ancient hierarchies. But for a time, we were not alone at the top. For a time, we lived in a world where the skies themselves were predators. And every shadow overhead was a question: is this the end, or just a cloud? Half a world away, in the ancient forests of Australia, the shadows didn't belong to big cats. There were no lions, tigers, or wolves prowling the underbrush. Instead, something stranger and, in many ways, more terrifying stalked the dense eucalyptus groves. Thylacoleo carnifex, the marsupial lion. Despite its feline name, Thylacoleo wasn't a true lion. It descended not from predators, but from peaceful herbivores, wombat-like marsupials that grazed and burrowed. But evolution doesn't care about lineage. It rewrites the rules based on need. And what Australia needed, in an ecosystem filled with giant, slow-moving prey, was a hyper-adapted ambush predator. Thylacoleo answered that call with unmatched efficiency. It was about the size of a leopard, but pound for pound, it had the strongest bite of any known mammalian carnivore living or extinct. Its jaws could slice through bone. Its semi-opposable thumbs, tipped with retractable claws, gave it a deadly grip. And unlike modern big cats, it didn't chase its prey. It waited in silence, then exploded with violence. Its prey included massive marsupial herbivores like Diprotodon, a 2-ton wombat-cow hybrid, and possibly even early humans. We can't say for certain whether it hunted us, but we know we feared it. Aboriginal legends speak of fearsome, shadow-dwelling beasts with backward-facing pouches and razor claws. They may not have used the name Thylacoleo, but they remembered. Across the world, in the frozen caves of Ice Age Europe, another monster reigned, the cave bear, Ursus spelaeus. Towering up to 12 feet tall on its hind legs and weighing nearly a ton, it was one of the largest carnivorous mammals to ever walk the continent. But what made it truly dangerous wasn't its size, it was its territory. Cave bears didn't just live in the wilderness, they lived in the cave sewer caves. In the battle for warmth and shelter, early humans found themselves competing directly with these titans. And it wasn't a fair fight. Many caves across France, Germany, and Romania are scarred with the remains of this brutal struggle. Fossilized claw marks in the stone walls, human and bear bones intermingled. Skull fractures that speak not of disease or age but of violence. Yet strangely, not all interactions were savage. In some caves, cave bear skulls were arranged, deliberately placed on stones, grouped in circles. It hints at something more complex than fear, respect, perhaps even reverence. To survive a creature so immense, so primal, may have inspired more than terror. It may have inspired myth. And then, deep within the painted halls of Chauvet Cave in southern France, we meet another ghost of that frozen time, the cave lion. These were not lions as we know them. Larger than modern African lions, with more muscular builds and possibly no manes at all, these beasts moved through the landscape with confident dominance. But the most remarkable thing about them isn't found in their bone sits, found in their portraits. Cave lions are etched into stone walls with grace and power. They aren't roaring, they aren't attacking, they simply exist, poised, present, respected. Our ancestors didn't paint them in fear, they painted them with awe. In these moments between the hunted and the hunter, between survival and symbolism, we see the earliest spark of something distinctly human, the need to remember, to honor, to understand what we once feared. Thylacoleo, the cave bear, the cave lion. Each of these predators tested our ancestors. Some may have killed them, others may have shared the same shelter. But all of them left something behind, marks in the earth, and echoes in our collective memory. These weren't just beasts. They were kings of a forgotten age. And in facing them, we became more than just survivors. We became storytellers. Long before humans ruled the open plains, the tundras and woodlands of the Ice Age were dominated by some of the most fearsome hunters to ever walk the earth, creatures that didn't rely on strength alone, but on strategy, coordination, and the power of the pack. In Ice Age Asia, one such predator stalked the frozen steppes with terrifying efficiency, the dire wolf, Canis dirus. Often associated with North America, these beasts were larger and more muscular than today's gray wolves, with crushing jaws capable of snapping through bone. But recent fossil discoveries in parts of Asia suggest their range may have been far wider than once believed, pointing to a more complex and brutal world than we previously imagined. Dire wolves weren't lone hunters. They moved in highly organized packs, using teamwork to overwhelm prey many times their size mammoths, bison, elk, even young rhinos. They didn't just chase. They flanked. They isolated the weak. They waited for the right moment to strike with brutal precision. In many ways, their hunting strategies mirrored the earliest human tribes. And that's what made them so dangerous to ooze. Not just their teeth, but their minds. These were predators capable of learning, adapting, outsmarting, but they weren't alone. On the wide-open tundras of Europe, Asia, and even parts of North America, another ghost of the Ice Age prowled with lethal grace, the scimitar cat Homotherium. A relative of the more famous Smilodon, Homotherium was faster, leaner, and arguably more terrifying. It had long limbs built for speed, a short tail for balance, and curved, saber-like canines perfectly designed for slicing through flesh in a single, precise bite. Unlike the stockier Smilodon, which likely ambushed prey in dense forests, Homotherium was built for open terrain. It didn't just attack, it hunted. Evidence from fossil sites suggests that Homotherium also hunted in groups, coordinating attacks on massive prey like horses, camels, and even juvenile mammoths. Kill sites show bones stripped clean with surgical efficiency. These weren't clumsy, frenzied killers. They were methodical, they were fast, and they were deadly. In this world, early humans didn't just have to fear a single predator, they had to fear many, working together. The tundra wasn't a field, it was a battlefield. And yet, even these apex hunters couldn't hold their ground forever. Roughly 10,000 years ago, the Ice Age came to an end. Temperatures shifted, ecosystems collapsed. The giant herbivores that once fed the dire wolves and scimitar cats began to disappear. And in their place came a new Forceus. Armed with fire, weapons, and growing numbers, humans began reshaping the land. We hunted smarter, we expanded farther, and everywhere we went, extinction followed close behind. Did we kill the scimitar cats directly? Perhaps not. But we took away their food, their space, their place in the world. The dire wolves lingered a little longer, but by 9,000 years ago, they too were gone, replaced by smaller, more adaptable canines, and by us. What remains now are bones buried in frozen soil, clues in the sediment, and legends waiting to be uncovered. But for thousands of years, these predators ruled the land. Not by brute force alone, but by cooperation, by calculation, by the shared rhythm of the hunt. They were the masters of the pack. And in their fall, we see the rise of another kind of predatorone that hunts with memory, fire, and language. One that still walks the earth. By then, everything had changed, and so had we. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had existed in the shadows of giants. We were smaller, slower, and physically weaker than nearly every predator around us. The world wasn't just dangerous, it was a crucible, a place where weakness meant extinction. But instead of perishing like so many others, we adapted, we evolved, we fought back. What we lacked in muscle, we made up for in memory. What we couldn't win with speed, we won with strategy. We were never the strongest, never the fastest, but we were the most adaptable. And that made all the difference. It began with fire. When early humans learned to control fire, everything changed. Suddenly, the night wasn't just a time for hiding, it became a time for gathering, for planning, for learning. Fire gave us warmth, protection, light, and most importantly, time. Time to think, time to dream, time to teach. Predators feared fire. The same beasts that once stalked our ancestors now hesitated at the edge of the glow. The line between prey and survivor had shifted. We no longer had to run. We could stand our ground. And then came language. With speech, humans entered a new evolutionary arena. No longer were we limited to what one person could observe. We could share knowledge, ideas, warnings, stories. A hunting tactic could spread across generations. A myth could teach children how to avoid danger. A single voice could shape an entire group's behavior. Language turned information into power. It allowed us to organize like no other species, to coordinate hunts, to assign roles, to remember what worked and what didn't. Memory wasn't just biological, it was cultural. Then came tools, extensions of our will, forged in stone and sharpened by necessity. The first spears were crude, but soon we were making axes, knives, bows, traps. Tools gave us reach. Tools gave us leverage. A spear could turn a frightened human into a mammoth killer. And with all these elements combined, fire, language, tool sway became strategists. We watched the patterns of herds. We learned where predators nested. We turned the environment itself into a weapon. We used cliffs to stampede prey. We built traps with teamwork. We turned fear into foresight. Bit by bit, we began to challenge the very beasts that once ruled over us. No longer content to survive, we began to dominate. And this transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, spiritual. We began to see meaning in the world around us. We painted on cave walls, not just what we feared, but what we revered. We developed rituals, symbols, beliefs. We didn't just kill to eat. We began to understand life and death in a deeper way. We mourned. We buried. We remembered. The predators that haunted us became teachers. Every clawed footprint, every howl in the night, every set of glowing eyes in the dark, they forced us to think differently, to move with purpose, to become something more than just another animal in the food chain. We didn't win the war with strength. We won it with unity, with vision, with imagination. And so, in the frozen silence of the Ice Age, a new apex species emerged not with fangs or fur but with fire in its hands and stories in its heart. From prey to planner, from target to tactician, the human counterattack had begun, and the world would never be the same. Across the Ice Age world, the monsters didn't vanish quietly. They fell in firelight and memory, their shadows stretching long across the early dawn of human civilization. But before they disappeared, they left something behind, not just bones or claw marks, but a legacy carved deep into our minds and our myths. In the Americas, dire wolves reigned longer than most. They pushed their dominance further than their Eurasian counterparts, expanding across vast territories, hunting megafauna like giant elk, bison, and even prehistoric horses. Their packs moved like storms organized, relentless, calculating. For a time, not even humans dared to cross paths with them unprepared. But even they could not withstand the dual pressure of a changing climate and a new, cunning competitor, us. With fire and stone, we fractured the old balance. As we hunted the same prey, dire wolves found themselves outmaneuvered and underfed. As our populations grew and spread, the ecosystems shifted. It wasn't always war, but it was displacement. And soon, the dire wolf became another name on the growing list of vanished kings. In Australia, Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion, had ruled for millennia. It thrived in an isolated land where evolution took strange turns. But when humans arrived with their fire sticks and rapid landscape change, everything shifted. Fires reshaped forests. Giant herbivores, the lion's prey, disappeared under hunting pressure. Without food, Thylacoleo followed them into extinction. No battles, no dramatic fall, just silence. But the silence was never total. In Asia, vast and wild, megafauna walked beside us woolly elephants, saber-toothed cats, prehistoric rhinoceroses. For a while, we coexisted. But as the Ice Age thawed and new tools emerged, Homo sapiens began to shape the world itself. We didn't just survive predators, we outlasted them, we erased them. Even the skies weren't safe. Creatures like Haast's eagle once ruled the air. But as we hunted their prey and expanded our reach, they vanished too. Our rise meant the fall of those who had once seemed immortal. And yet we remembered them. We didn't just fear them, we painted them. On cave walls in France, lions roam across torchlit stone. In Indonesia, stenciled handprints stand beside outlines of beasts long gone. In the American Southwest, petroglyphs show men beside monsters maybe real, maybe remembered, maybe both. We turned our terror into stories, our predators into gods. The cave bear became a creature of ritual. The lion, a symbol of courage, the eagle, a spirit in the sky. Because deep down, we knew what they had given us. They forced us to grow, to organize, to remember. In many ways, they shaped us more than we shaped the land. They were our enemies, but also our creators. Each challenge made us sharper, each loss made us wiser. Each monster we faced taught us something vital, how to be human. And now, long after their bones have turned to dust, their memory lives on not in fossils, but in our culture. They are the gods we extinguished, and the gods we still carry in our stories. They no longer stalk the forests or soar above the plains, but they live in our legends. They left more than footprints. The monsters of prehistory didn't just shape our past, they shaped our very nature. With every clawed attack, every howling night, every red-streaked sunrise stained by the hunt, they carved their mark into who we would become. They taught us to fear, but they also taught us to adapt. Because these beasts, these dire wolves, scimitar cats, cave lions, and eagles of death, they didn't just vanish into oblivion. They stepped back into the shadows of our collective memory, leaving behind symbols, instincts, and echoes. Their bones turned to fossils, but their presence, that still lingers. In our stories, in our rituals, in our myths. What if creatures like Megalaniath, a giant predatory lizard of ancient Australia, still roamed the land today? What if the massive Wanambi serpent still slithered through riverbeds, hunting in silence beneath the reeds? How would our cities look? Would we build them differently? Would we huddle behind walls, gaze at the sky with caution, and whisper legends of death hiding in the trees? Maybe we would live smaller lives, or maybe we would reawaken a part of ourselves we've lost: the primal vigilance, the awe of the unknown, the deep understanding that nature is not tame. But they're gone, and we remain. Not because we were destined to win, not because we were better, but because we were different, because we learned, we cooperated, we passed on knowledge, not just through genes, but through stories. We forged alliances, we built weapons, we lit the night, we remembered. That more than muscle, more than speed saved us. The world we inherited wasn't a gift, it was a battlefield, and every step forward was paid for in blood and fire. The fact that we're still here is not a coincidence. It's a consequence of struggle, loss, and relentless survival. So when we stare into the eyes of a lion on a cave wall, or feel a chill looking at an eagle's fossilized talon, it's not just curiosity, it's connection, it's recognition. These were our nightmares, but they were also our teachers. And perhaps that's why we still tell these stories, not just to entertain, not just to remember, but to awaken something ancient within us, something that whispers, "You were forged in fear, hardened by hunt, born from the shadows of giants." And if we forget that, we forget who we really are. Subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows for more journeys into the terrifying, awe-inspiring world before history. Because to know where we're going, we must first remember how we survived.